Hey, friends. If you've been loving the conversations we have here on the All in My Head podcast, and you're looking for a way to ground your thoughts, reflect more deeply, or just make space for yourself in the chaos, I've created something for you. My very own journals are now available on Amazon. Whether it's the gratitude journal to help you focus on the good, especially on the hard days, or the Mind Unwind journal, a space to release, reset, and realign. These were made with you in mind, my thoughtful, deep feeling, always reflecting listeners. Just head to Amazon and search Gratitude, Mind Unwind Journal, or my name, Jenny Jimenez-Sullivan, or check the link in the show notes to grab your copy. It's simple, intentional, and ready to meet you wherever you are.
Please, allow me to show you something.
Welcome back to the All in My Head podcast. I'm Jenny, and I am your host, and you have arrived here today for episode 21. And episode 21 is called Anchored No More: Why Derrion Henderson Chose Change. And let me tell you some things that are pretty amazing about Derrion. Derrion Henderson is an Emmy Award-winning communicator, storyteller, and entrepreneur with more than a decade of experience in the media industry. He's anchored and reported in major news outlets, including St. Louis for Fox 2 News, and most recently, where I know him from, at WMBF News in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Throughout his career, Derrion has been recognized for journalism excellence, and that earned him 2 regional Edward R. Murrow Awards for his impactful storytelling and commitment to community-focused coverage. Derrion is also the founder of Speak Up LLC, a media consulting company dedicated to empowering professionals and organizations through media training, speech writing, public speaking, coaching, and voice training. And his passion lies in helping others find their voice, refine their message, and speak with confidence and clarity. And like I said, Derrion was very familiar to our family because we watched him every morning on the news. And I'm not even that big on news because it's sad. So if he could make me get up and watch the news in the morning, you knew that he was amazing at what he did. And he just brought a realness, and you felt like you were watching a friend on TV. So I am so grateful to welcome him to the All in My Head podcast so he can tell you all the things that he has been up to since he has left. Welcome, Derrion.
Thank you so much for having me, Jenny, and thanks so much for the introduction. You make me sound so important.
You are very important. And I'll start by saying, I'm that person who stalks your social media when you were on, because not only is he a great storyteller and anchor when he was on our local news, but he's just a fun guy, and he's doing all the things and always looking crisp. So I was always on there saying, hey, looking good, doing great.
Thank you. And that was done intentionally. I'm always about showing people that you don't have to be all of that to be all of this, and realizing that I'm just like you. I'm just a guy who just chose a job that allows me to be on television. So I'm here, right. But that doesn't make me any different than what you're dealing with. I do the same things you do. You're going to see me out in restaurants. Just act like you don't see it on the Monday morning news. But
exactly.
I'm just like you, and I've always done that intentionally. And it makes me so proud that others received it.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mama did well with you, because you're just so approachable. You're so kind in public, and people have said that, and other people who have met you locally have said the same thing. So yes, we were sad to see you go, but also so excited to hear about what's to come. So let's start maybe at the beginning. Let's start with who was Derrion Henderson before this big change? Who were you? I mean, I told people about you, but give us a little background.
Yeah. I mean, how far back do we want to go, child?
Listen, I'm here for all the tea. So whatever you want to spill, I am here for it.
So you want to just before Myrtle Beach? Is that
I mean,
or
let's start with like, how did you even get into this? Obviously, you've always been a storyteller because if
yeah.
people have seen any coverage that you've done, and
Mhm.
especially those stories where you've won these awards, they'll know that you're a storyteller
Yeah.
naturally.
You know what? Okay, cool.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So, kind of where did
Yeah.
that all start for you?
Absolutely. So the thing about me and even my journey to like news and even journalism is that I didn't grow up wanting to be on TV, which I think
Mm,
really places me aside from a lot of people. I think, and even when I got into the industry, like some people was like, "Oh, I remember watching X, Y, and Z, some big
mhm.
name in their city that's been there for decades, and I always wanted to be him or her." And that was just never my ministry. And it wasn't
Wow.
because we didn't watch the news. We watched the news. We all, just like everyone else, we sat around watching the 5 o'clock news. KSDK, Channel 5 in St. Louis, they had this, the ending of their show, they were the number one in St. Louis. And
Mhm.
at the end of the show, they would go around to different elementary schools and the students will hold up five and then hold up one. So we will always like watch the news, of
Okay.
course, but then wait around to see the kids at the very end to see if they went to a school that we knew or a classroom, or
Right.
if once someone's kid was there when like the cameras were there watching to see if they were on that night. So
Mhm.
that's what I remember news being when I was young, but I never watched it with this idea of I'm gonna do that one day
Okay.
at all, at all. It only came to me when I started college at Harrisburg State University. It's a historically black university
Mhm.
in the city of St. Louis. And I started going there because I graduated high school with a horrible GPA. I think it was like
Mm.
2.2 or something. It was just trash.
Same.
Just horrible. Like you just gave
Yeah.
no energy.
Yeah. Understand 100%.
Yes, yes. But I will say, and we're going to get to more of this moment, but even as I'm sitting here talking to you now, I believe it was a moment in high school when I realized that when I needed to make a change,
Mhm.
I just do it, and I and
Mhm.
I and I and I find a way. So what had happened was, as the kids say, what had
What
happened
had
was
happened was.
is when I was in high school. It was my sophomore year. I was in Riverview Garden School District, which is in North County, in St. Louis, a
Mhm.
predominantly black area. It wasn't when we first moved in with my family back in '97.
Mhm.
But it grew to be a predominantly black space in St. Louis, along with the school district. And what I realized within the school district, it had lost accreditation, and I just wasn't motivated. I
Mhm.
wasn't learning. I literally would just go to school because it was something I had to do. But then I
Right.
realized in that moment that okay, this is sophomore year. My GPA is that.
Mm.
I have this amount of credits. Wait, I need that amount of credits to graduate. It doesn't look like I am on track to do said thing.
Right.
And it doesn't, and even from my production and my current classes, it doesn't seem as if I'm even in the space to even want to do it. So what do I
Right.
need to do? So a lot of students was going to North Technical High School, which was like a
Mhm.
tech school in St. Louis. Of course, you have your core classes, and then you also take whatever trade that you wanted to do.
Right.
So I signed myself up for it. I didn't even, I don't know, maybe I talked to my mom, I don't remember, but I remember signing myself up for it, telling my mom what
Wow.
she needed to be, what she needed to sign, and I made it happen for myself. And I ended up going there half a day, I believe, the second semester of my sophomore year. And then my junior year, I went to the technical school full time.
Okay.
Graduated on time, but as once again with GPA, what you start off with impacts what you end with, right? It's much
Absolutely.
harder to get it up than it is
Absolutely.
to drop it, as we all know, just like a credit score,
Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
that's pretty much how it was. It was just hard to get out of that hole that I placed myself in. And I remember feeling
Mhm.
so down because so many of my peers were getting acceptance letters in the fall. Right, we
Right.
had just started school, and some of them was like, "Oh, I was accepted into Mizzou. I was accepted into all these
Mm.
different universities, and here I am, not even thinking about applying because
Right.
I know my grades."
Yep.
And I had to just figure it out. And I remember I always worked. This is what I just always just
Mhm.
did. And I remember getting to the point I was working for Macy's, like around the time that I was graduating, and I'm like, I cannot do this. I my life is not coming to this space and
Right.
folding this same shirt every day. That's just not what I'm going to do with my life.
Right.
So I did well on my ACT, not the best. I didn't get like a 36 or whatever it was.
Right.
But I did get an 18. I did get an 18. And what the 18 did was, and a lot of my peers did not get 18s, but what the 18 did was it placed me in college courses.
Exactly.
So what I did was I went to Harrisville State University, which was open enrollment. So everyone's enrolled.
Right.
And I took that ACT, and that allowed me to be in college courses right off the top. My first semester, I believe I made like a 3.8.
Look at that.
Immediately, right? Just by
right.
applying myself.
Right.
And in that moment, I was taking a writing class. And in that writing class, I was just doing extremely well. I was doing so well that I remember like doing papers and like doing it like the day before and getting it back from like the teacher. Yeah. And she's like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, oh my, I'm getting like 110s on them and stuff.
Because you loved it.
She's gaslighting me.
No, because you loved it. That's why it showed.
Gaslighting me. And what I realized at that moment, like I'm doing so well in my writing class. And at that time, I was getting up and watching the morning news. Actually, Fox 2, where I used to work. I was getting up and watching them every single morning. It was just good. And I was like, literally in my mind. And I was getting braces too to like fix my grill. Yeah. And in my mind, I remember one night, I was like, I think I want to go into journalism. Wow. It was a thought. The next day, literally the next day, I'm sitting in like my computer class or whatever that they had us to do, like an elective at Harrisville. And I can picture it to this. I would never forget this moment. I'm sitting there doing my work, and my professor, like, she looks over at me, and I'm looking at her. I'm like, what's she looking at me for? And then she's like, she's staring at me, and I'm like, still like, what is she staring at me? And she just goes randomly, what's your major? And I was like, I don't know. I changed it to journalism like last night, and like in my mind. And she was like, oh my God, I can really see that for you. I know a guy who works in news here in St. Louis. Wow. He used to be one of my students. I'm gonna get you in contact with him. It's fine if I get you in contact with him and y'all can talk and da-da-da. And she made that connection. His name is Jeff Smalls. In St. Louis, I talked to Jeff, and that sealed the deal. And that's where it started.
And isn't it amazing how like things just align that way? Like really, truly, had you had not gone on that journey of going, wait a minute, I need all these credits to graduate. I need to do something different because I'm not going to get there that traditional way. And I worked in public schools in Connecticut for 19 years, and I saw that all the time with students. And we had to find different options for them and kind of help them find what they were going to be passionate about, whatever that is, whether it was college, a trade school, or whatever, the military. But isn't it amazing how you were like, all right, I got to do something. And then all those things led you to the point where you're in that class. And even the teacher already knew, like, yeah, this is what you should be doing.
Okay. And the biggest thing was me realizing myself that, of course, naturally, we all go to work and do the same thing. It's just what we do for a living, right? Yeah. But I realized in that moment that I want to go to work and do something, but do something different at the same time. I know I have to do the same job every day, but I want to do something different within that job every single day. And that was journalism. That was news. You go to work, you're still doing the same thing. You're writing the story, period, right? But it's different every single day. You're never writing the same story. You're never, even if it's the same subject and it's like continuing coverage, you're still not the same story that you're doing from the day prior.
Right. And it's never the same delivery either. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can have two different anchors on the news and their delivery of whatever it is, and we're still here watching the stations here, and and so we'll just leave it at that.
Nice, Jenny.
I'm not being mean. I'm just saying, listen, for me, I'm that person who I try to be as optimistic as possible. That's just kind of my nature. So the news can be that kind of thing that brings you down. But if you have somebody on the other end who is executing it well, who they're passionate about it, they're also just natural storytellers and speakers and have that gift, then it makes it that much easier. But when you're watching others that maybe don't have that passion in it, or we don't know necessarily what goes on behind the scenes, but sometimes my husband and I will turn the news on and we're like, we're going to turn that back off because it's just not coming across the same way. If we have to decipher, then is it the news or is it just a puzzle, at this the game? So, so no, props to you for that, because again, you can tell that it's something that you have always been passionate about. It just, it comes across that way. But what I wanted to know was, can you describe what life looked like when you were kind of anchored in that space in mainstream media, and kind of what it is behind the scenes, and what does that look like for somebody who's not in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely different. Actually, ironically, I was talking about this with my barber literally like last Friday. And he was like, "Oh my God, you need to talk about it like on your podcast, like the Derrion LA show." And I'm like, "Oh, I guess." I mean, for me, I have to find the right person to talk about it with, because I can't talk about it with just anyone. Someone has to just know what I'm talking about to deliver that type of conversation. But it's completely different than what people believe it is. On different levels, different levels, honestly. I mean, even with me getting into the industry, because even when I did go off, I left Harrisville that first year, and then I went to Southeast Missouri State where my friends were. They had a journalism program. It was either there or Mizzou. And when I got down there, didn't even have a TV program down there. So I still didn't learn TV even in college when I was learning journalism. I didn't learn TV.
Unbelievable.
Which is crazy anyway. But I finally got into the industry. What people don't understand is that when you look and you see that's the NBC, that's the Fox, not say a lot of my time, but a lot of it in St. Louis when I would go sit on panels and talk to people was helping them realize is that, yes, I work for Fox 2 News in St. Louis, right? But we are not Fox News.
Exactly.
And people don't understand that. Like,
they don't.
The same people who pay Fox News did not sign my checks in St. Louis. Like, it's an affiliate. Like, we pay for the affiliation to the Fox name, not even the brand of what Fox wants to be, or any other brand, NBC, or even ABC or CBS. You just pay for the affiliation.
Exactly.
That's it, which is like really programming. Like for you to see the View and stuff of that nature in your market. That's what the affiliation is for, right? So it's just like helping folks realize that and trying to get over those barriers and people talking to you. It's a little bit easier for me just because I was from St. Louis. So that worked out a little bit more. But that's like a side of it. But I think a big misconception is that the people in news are making this astronomical amount of money. Now, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. They were. They were. Like, let's not mistake it. They were making some amazing money. And if I can pinpoint it, and mind you, I was still young at that time, but now knowing what I know, I can pinpoint it. It happened. The switch came at the recession around 08, 09, 2010. That's when that switch happened. Right. And they said, we're not paying them. It was like they just
which is crazy
it was like
to
a come to Jesus of like, we're not paying anymore. Because anyone really after that has not been getting paid, depending upon your market. I mean, of course, it's standard, which I hate even saying that because
I know it's so ridiculous.
Don't subscribe to that, but it's standard in news for you to start off in a smaller market, of course, and not get paid a substantial amount of money because you're starting off, you're getting your foot in the door. You're learning your mistakes so that when you finally get to those bigger markets, you're not making stupid mistakes and you have better writing techniques and meeting your deadlines and things. And the thing about it is when it's time to go to those bigger markets, like a lot of people, are not even starting off in the smaller markets anymore. They're starting off in these big cities. And they're not paying them anything.
Which is crazy.
And then you got a guy like me coming in that's like, I know my worth, and I'm not taking that. And it's not because I'm arrogant, because I got the in me and I got the Murrows. It's because I know what I bring to what I do. And
you do.
And you're just not going to just not pay for it. Because I know within any position that I'm in, I'm going to do the job.
Absolutely.
I'm going to do it well and to the best of my abilities. So, and I know you're going to make me mad. At some point, you're going to make me mad. And I need to be able to look at something to say, you know what, you just made me mad, but that check ain't too bad. So at least I'm
Exactly.
going home and I'm all right. I'm not looking for money, you know?
Right. And do you feel like that's kind of what happens with these smaller markets? And we don't even have to talk about in particular this market in the Myrtle
It's
Beach
every
area, but these
market.
smaller markets, is it that they kind of get stuck and pigeonholed because of the fact that they're not producing, what people should be getting paid? So they're getting kind of the younger and the
Yeah.
less
Well,
experienced anchors?
yeah. I mean, what Myrtle Beach is, the thing about Myrtle Beach is that it's like normally in those type of markets, when you want to, go the trajectory of being an anchor, you restart off in like a smaller market.
Right.
So you get to like a St. Louis, you're like, I want to go be an anchor. Either you're going to make it work in St. Louis and fill in until you can't fill in no more, and eventually they promote you, hopefully, or you go back to a Myrtle Beach. You learn the ropes again, and then you build your way back up to that St. Louis part to kind of get back to that. So in Myrtle Beach, I guess you're supposed to get some of the, people who are just trying to see, like, what it is or whatever.
Right.
But even in that market, you're supposed to have at least a few great journalists that's carrying the station that is the reason why people in the market, like, just be honest, because I don't work there no more. It's just like an Ed Pediatrowski, right? Like, you're supposed to have an Ed at your station that is the selling factor, right?
Exactly.
Because, okay, we have Ed. So any meteorologist is like, okay, I want to go work in Myrtle Beach and work for WPDE because I want to work under Ed and learn from Ed, so then I can then learn from him so much that I can go up and I can be on ABC. Because Ed's not going to ABC.
No.
Like he's solidified himself within the Myrtle Beach
Absolutely.
market. So he's the big fish, small pond in that area, right?
Right. Absolutely. So he's a celebrity here.
He's the driving factor of getting people to come to Myrtle. And they're not creating those anymore. I mean, let's just be honest. No. They're just not creating those type of people anymore, or allowing those people to build to be one of those type of people, right? Because you didn't have to pay them.
That part.
Right.
That part. And that's what I was talking with my husband before I came on, and I said, I just want to touch on this. And he's like, listen, like, step lightly on that subject because the man is still in media. And I was like, listen, I get that. But if we're talking true talk here, maybe it's because Connecticut, we had a bigger market there. It was definitely people who were coming in, making their name. And of course, there's still people who are there 30, 40 years later, but making that name, building themselves up, and then moving on to even bigger markets. But some of it, I was like, wow, it's night and day watching the news here in the past 6 years than there. And I was like, so when you came on, I was like, refreshing. Like, I'm like, this is refreshing because it's also like you could tell the experience, but you could tell the love of it. And even in your in-depth stories that, we're going to talk some about and some of the awards that you win because of it, you could just tell the difference. And to me, that's like, as a storyteller myself in a very different way, I'm there for the story. Like, I don't want to hear the sadness of all the things that are going on in the world as much because we're in a state right now, right? We are in a state. But I also want to hear these stories, and I want to hear like the truth behind the stories, and I want to hear it executed well. So that's kind of what I wanted to touch on. And my husband was like, listen, you step lightly in there. I was like, you said we can talk about anything. So
you can step. Like,
I am talking about it.
I stand 10 toes down from wherever I say. So don't feel as if you have to hold back whatsoever.
And listen, I'm the same way. I started this journey in podcasting at 50 years old. I started my writing journey at this stage of my life and have kind of not reinvented myself, but I'm doing all the things that I wanted to do. I don't hold back anymore. I'm not that person anymore. Like, I kept my mouth shut for 40 some odd years now. I'm like speaking my truth. And if anybody wants to speak their truth, that's what this platform is for.
That's funny you say that, because that is literally what one of my former mentors told me even when I was releasing my memoir, because I was on like this, I can say this tour, but people who I mentioned in the book, I was giving them the courtesy to know that, hey, I did mention about the interaction within the book. And he stopped me. He literally said, he was like, bro, that's your book. Okay? Right. It's your book. Yeah. So he was like, and it's your book, that's your memoir, that's your perspective. He was like, if anybody has a problem with it, they can write their own.
Exactly.
So that's it.
And that's what I've been doing. I'm teaching a few.
I stopped. In that
That's what I'm
moment,
saying.
I
Like, it's
stopped.
your story. Anybody
Yes.
else wants to tell their story, there's so many platforms to do so. And I
Yes.
was teaching this course over at Ollie at CCU, and people were like, well, what if somebody doesn't want their story told? And I was like, it's my story to tell. It may not be their version of the
Mm-hmm.
story. And they're welcome to either come on the podcast and talk about it. In my poetry book, my poetry is my poetry when that comes out. That's all it is. It's my way of releasing what I went through.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can negate the experience that I had. They may have experienced it differently, but that's up to them to tell that story or not.
Yeah.
But I don't have to have this conversation with anybody. It's my journey. So they can have their journey the same way I'm having my journey. So
Absolutely.
yes, 10
And
toes
it's the
down
truth.
on that.
Like, and the thing about the truth is that there's nothing else to it. It stands on its own.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's it. That is that. Love that. So since we talked a little bit about maybe the not so fun things or the difference about kind of mainstream media, what did you love about that time? Like, what did you love about not only the experience in St. Louis, but the experience in Myrtle Beach? What did that do for you?
I loved, honestly, what this created, even within this moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the connections. You know, I love
Yeah.
meeting people. I love interacting with people. I like you said, I mean, it goes back to even my ideal, even about being on TV. Like, the reason why I was never so uppity nosed about it or so into it is, once again, because I didn't want to do this my whole life.
Right.
So, you know, and I feel as if that's the difference a lot of times when we talk about that idea of who people think a TV person's supposed to be. A lot of people who are like that grew up wanting to do it, right?
Right.
So finally they got there, and oh my gosh, I'm this. And
Right.
for me, it was just a job. So it was just like, you know,
Right.
the difference between you and me going to work today is I'm going to work and I'm being on TV. You're going to work and you're not. That's it.
Right.
But like, at the end of the day, like, we're all the same person. We all eat at the same restaurants. Which goes back to like a misconception too, I think, about like news too, because it goes back to this whole, like, even the fake news situation, like, which is huge. And I remember very, very vividly, if I can tell the story just real quick. I remember going, if you're, of course, your listeners probably in Myrtle Beach, or back in Connecticut.
Oh, I'm sorry. No. I'm in 157 counties or towns, and I think we're up at 30 countries. So no. We are global right now.
Okay.
So knocking on wood, because it has grown exponentially, and I'm proud of that, but also a little surprised. A little surprised, but you just never know what people are looking to hear out there. And I think my execution is just, I speak my truth. Yeah. I speak from my experience. I've lived some stuff, and I'm not afraid to talk about it. So, so tell it. It's out there.
Okay.
The world is listening.
I just had that for perspective. So
sure.
WNBF is near the airport. It's like right around the airport. Right. Yeah, I just had it for the perspective of that. So it's near the airport. It's like a quick 5-minute Uber ride, like 10-minute Uber ride. But I'd rather, of course, as anyone who's why we parked at the airport, I'd rather park at my employer, Uber to the airport, and then catch an Uber back because I just didn't want to deal with that. So I Ubered, got in the Uber, and this guy, he was just like, he was like, you work there? I'm like, yeah. He was like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm the morning anchor. He's like, oh, okay, cool. I was like, yeah. He was like, so do they write everything for you? I was like, yeah, no. Not. I'm like, no, not at all. I'm like, actually, I come into work at about 2:30, 3 a.m. every day, and I look over the whole script. I said, so before I go in and I sit down at 5 a.m., I read every script that we have. I'm looking at
you've already done 2 hours of work.
Right. Making sure that what we're telling you is accurate. And I'm like, a lot of times, too, it's in real time. So a producer that just got in my ear and told me, hey, I put this story into the rundown. We have breaking news coming up. And while my co-anchor is reading, I'm literally looking at the story that's about to be in the teleprompter in about 2.5 seconds, making sure that it is as accurate as I can make it be in that moment, and that the sentences are actually going to make sense when they come out of my mouth.
Exactly.
So that's what it is. And he was just like, I'm like, and I had to put in perspective for him. And I'm like, the thing about it is, I said that thing that a lot of people don't understand. I said, what do I have to gain lying to you?
Right.
I said, so I said, the thing about it, I said, realize that when I tell you on the news that gas prices is going up, guess who's paying those gas prices too in Myrtle Beach? Me.
Yeah.
Right? When I tell you that the eggs are going to be more expensive in your grocery stores in our area, guess who is paying for those eggs too? Me.
Right.
When I tell you that the taxes, right, are going to be going up, or they're thinking about doing this, thinking about doing that, guess who that's also going to affect?
Absolutely.
Me. I said, and furthermore, right, to even give you more perspective, I just told you the morning news anchor in your town is in the back of your, and I wanted to say your dirty Uber.
That part.
Okay. Your dirty Uber, right, to take me to the airport. I'm not going to the airport to get on my private jet. I'm going to get on, at that time, maybe a Spirit flight.
Exactly.
So understand that there is a difference. Like, yes, there are journalists who makes millions of dollars. You look at Anderson Cooper, you look at Lester Holt, you look at the people on the big networks. Yes, they have $1 million contracts. Craig Melvin, yes, $1 million contracts. Absolutely. But your local news anchors, your local reporters, no. Some of them are barely making it themselves.
Right.
So what do they have to gain going into work to lie to you?
Do you think that comes from, and this is me as a person who's taking in the media on this side, and do you think that comes from the fact that there are these networks that just blatantly lie and tell this one-sided version? And I say that also having just come off watching Good Night and Good Luck because they live broadcasted it. I'd be in New York if I could have that day, and watching how Edward R. Murrow walked that line of telling his truth, and some people looking at it as very one-sided, but also it was his way of kind of giving that perspective and his way of broadcasting. But we have so many outlets that just tell this very one-sided and very
that's the other
harmful way of telling the news. So do you think that that's where it was coming from for him, or he was just kind of like, I don't know.
The Uber driver?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely came from, you having this idea in your mind, but just not knowing the truth.
Right.
Which is completely fine. And by the time I got out of the Uber, he thanked me for giving him that perspective. Because once again, I created the picture for him.
Right. And he wouldn't have known had he not asked.
Unless you have that perspective. I really think that last part is what really gave him that perspective. I just told you your local news anchor is in the back of your car, your van, headed to the airport. I don't have a driver. I don't have an Escalade coming to pick me up.
Yep, I don't have my private jet waiting.
My private jet. I'm going to MYR. So let's just be real here, right?
Right.
What do I have to gain from that? And once you bring it down to that level and you create that picture, a lot of more people understand it. And honestly, and going back to your comment about, a lot of outlets or some outlets being more biased than others, I personally believe a lot of, like, of course, the bigger ABC, NBC, outlets, I think they get a bad rep. Honestly, and personally, because like I've met some of these people at the National Association of Black Journalists conferences, and once again, these people are the same way. Like, if people realize the level of care that is put onto a story before you ever see it. Now, social media gives us a space to where you can see the story before I even can really vet it, to really understand it. But then it makes it, because some people are going to see it on social media and then look to the news to verify it. Even though they still may have this idea of fake news or whatever, they're still looking at the news to verify what they're seeing on social media. Right. And there's conferences, and it's a whole conference, the NABJ conference, but within that you have these sessions and you have these workshops. I did CNN last year, and we literally had a whole section, a 3-hour section of literally how do you spot AI. Right. And people think
it's so
people think it's
prevalent.
It's just for photos, but like you really have to look at it. Because the smallest thing in a photo, and you in the moment of breaking news, think of recently, the plane that crashed. What was it? Japan, or not Japan, I forgot what it was. India.
India.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Before any news station can run any video, before you saw any picture on CNN or
Right.
ABC or anything of that, there's a team. There's a
Right.
team of people whose
Right.
jobs is literally to look at these
To verify.
videos to
Yeah.
verify it.
Right.
So this idea that people are just pumping out and it all comes down the track. Now, if your
Right.
station decides to run something and it didn't come from like the wires or anything of that nature,
Mm-hmm.
then you're on your own, whatever your local
Right.
news station decides to do. But when it comes to even like the big networks, you just got to be like understand these people again. Like they have no reason to lie to you.
Right.
Like, but you have to make sure you're looking at credible sources. That's the biggest thing as well. Because like you said, in so many instances, the market then becomes oversaturated with people who don't like what they're seeing.
Exactly.
So then they just create their own thing and just make it up. They just
Right.
call it what it is and just make it up,
Right. And even like with social media, we've talked about, so many people can just come out and be like, I'm telling you the news and I'm now a news person, whether
I don't know on X. Like,
Right.
I don't know. Like, because when you go to their actual page, it's like, I don't even know if this AI. I don't know who this person is. Where this
I have
video is
never
from,
set
what
up a
they're
thing on
talking
there. I'm like,
about.
I don't have any time for that. I don't even know. I don't want to know.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
And it hurts all of us,
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. And I think that that's the thing. I think it does damage. And I think after watching that Good Night and Good Luck, it was so eye-opening for me in so many ways, because I'm not a person who's in the media,
Mhm.
but as a person on the outside looking in and seeing kind of all the things that news journalists have gone through
Mhm.
and are going through and will continue to go through, and
Yeah.
even women and kind of the place that they started and where
evolution.
they're going and the
Yeah.
evolution of things was quite astounding. And just to see the kind of groundbreaking things that Edward R. Murrow did,
Mhm.
just kind of opened that up for journalists to come,
Yeah.
like to do amazing things in that
Mhm.
market. But as a Black man in mainstream media, let's talk about that. Were there any challenges or any unique challenges or expectations that you had to navigate through?
Absolutely. I mean, even getting the job
Mhm.
is like that's challenging. Like, and I
Right.
think people don't realize it, like understand, like literally me even trying to get into the industry. I don't think I've ever did that. Maybe I put this in my book. I'm not really sure. I think I put it in my book. But I would search news stations and I would look up the news team. And if I saw a Black male on the news team, I wouldn't email or apply for the job at the news station
Interesting.
because it's standard to have one.
The quota has filled.
The quota is filled. And I'm just being completely honest. And that was me getting my first job. And believe me, okay, my actual first job, guess what newsroom I walked into? A newsroom, and I was the only Black man. And the thing about being at that particular news station at KFBS 12, I was the only Black man in the building. So that means on TV, behind the camera, even the janitor, sales, like camera op, everything.
Yep.
I was the only Black man in the building.
Listen, I feel that. I feel that as a Latina woman who was raised in kind of a predominantly white neighborhood. And again, I think my parents were doing the best that they could with the information that they had, sending us to Catholic schools. But it was how many conversations I overheard where our quota is filled. That we have, Jenny, we have her sister, we have her cousin, and their good friend. We have 4 Latinas here, and then we have the 4 Black guys who play basketball.
Yep.
So we're good. So yeah, I get that. And even working in the school system where I worked, where it was predominantly Hispanics in the district, in a poor district, and how many times I was told by other guidance counselors and other staff that you could pass for Italian or you could pass for whatever. And I'm like, my name is Jenny Jimenez-Sullivan. Like, why would I pass? Like, these kids need representation here. You know what I'm saying? So I feel
and that's what they want is pass. Because I'll have to mention that part too, is that I can't pass for nothing because I'm dark. Okay,
right.
So like that creates a whole nother thing too. And to be honest, I've intentionally moved, and I've always had it in my mind to make sure, and I unapologetically always ask in interviews, do you have the equipment to light me? Period. I am. Listen, you have to.
Good.
I need extra lights. Not a station I've worked for has not added an extra light just for me. That was called the Derrion camera, because I need extra light.
Right.
And I'm not just going to sit around and wait for you to do it. I'm going to ask you to make sure that you have it. Because
exactly.
No one's going to turn on our news and see me standing here and be like, I can't even see that, brother.
Right. But isn't it interesting that even like that's something that you have to advocate for? Yes. Like as anything, like we have to advocate for ourselves.
I would just make that clear too. It's never been a problem,
right?
At no station I've worked for to make sure that I had the adequate light that I needed when it came to being on.
Right.
On
they just
set.
Didn't know.
Yeah, they just didn't. I mean, they didn't have anyone that was my skin tone there, so it was just like it was past like not knowing, because they know. But they don't have to add it because
they didn't have anybody there.
You know what I mean? Like, so that's like the biggest thing. But like,
yeah,
and even through like set changes and everything, when it even came to WMBF, it was like we have to be very intentional. So when we're getting a new set, I was like, oh, okay, we got a white light, right? Yeah. So we had like the morning light setting that preferred me, and then they had the evening light setting for the white male anchor. So it's just the reality of it, and that's different ways that I have to navigate this industry, being a dark-skinned Black man. So, and it's a whole lot, like I said, other things that I've mentioned just in my book, being in Southeast Missouri and just dealing with bits and part of racism, being at a county office and one woman saying, like, she jokingly, I would give her that at least, was just like, well, don't make me slap the black off of you. Like, it was definitely instances, where I definitely had to like deal with things like that. But I'm good with navigating those spaces because I know who I am and I know whose I am. So I don't let people and their motives give to me, because it not getting to me is going to hurt you more. Yeah. So I'm just going to let you sit in that, because I'm going to enjoy it, because like you're going to be sitting there squirming the whole time, hoping and wishing that it gets to me. And I just never give people that satisfaction.
I love that, because that was kind of a second part to my question. Like, did you ever feel like you had to hide any parts of yourself, or kind of, I don't know, kind of wash it in a different way for your audience, or even for the people that you worked for?
I mean, of course, as much as open as I was, I still am. On social media, there is things that I just want for myself. Because being on TV and having to give everything over, it's like there's some things that you just want just for you.
Yeah, that you
have to keep something
private
that is literally for me, right? Unless it's going to be all for you, and then you're just in every aspect of my life, and I'm not in no aspect of yours. So how you going to be all up in mine? So
exactly. So my husband and I have this conversation a lot, because I'll say something about a specific person that I follow, or somebody in media in some way, or on TV, whatever, whether it's like trash reality TV or whatever. And he'll say, well, that's what they open themselves up to. And I was like, that doesn't mean every aspect of their lives can be scrutinized. Like, there are some things that they want to hold private. And he's like, well, when you sign that contract on the line, don't you think you're kind of signing that away? And I was like, I think if I signed a contract tomorrow, there would still be things that I hold dear. You're not coming after my children. You're not coming after my grandchildren. I may talk about them loosely, but I'm also not going to give you every detail of where they are, what they're doing. Like, there's just things that I still hold sacred.
Because people didn't feel obligated to then hear everything.
Right. And then what's for you?
Nothing left for me. So
yeah, I think that's just a good way to kind of protect what you hold dear to. Because again, I'll talk about certain things, and I've been very open. I've talked about trauma. I've talked about abuse. I've talked about so many things, but I also, there's so much that I'll talk about. And then there's other things that I'm just like, well, that's not.
And at a certain level, it's enough,
Right.
Like for me, I just don't want to know that much about someone, so I don't understand
Right.
why someone else would. But that's just me.
Right. Right. To each his own. To each his own. So let's talk about that moment of change. Like,
Mm-hmm.
was it a series of moments or was it just this one thing that made you shift and go, okay, I have to do something different. I want something different out of this next journey in my life.
Mm-hmm. I mean, because I can always pinpoint when like,
Mm-hmm.
looking back in like hindsight, I can always pinpoint like when thoughts come to me and it's like you thought that then and you knew, but you just
Right.
kind of just vibed it out.
Right.
There was one time in my first apartment when I moved to Myrtle Beach. I stayed in that apartment for 2 years. So within the first 2 years of my 4-year tenure, I was getting up, going to work, and I remember being at the elevator, and I remember saying to myself, "You're not doing this for the rest of your life.
Mm.
Like, you're not going to do this for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't it. Like, I just can't see myself waking up at 2 a.m. every day for the rest of my life."
Listen, I was tired for you. Like I'd get up at 7 and that
Right.
was early for me because I used to get up at 5 a.m. and
Right.
be at work for the school system. But I was tired for you. I was like, I can't believe these people are up 3 to 4 hours beforehand.
And then on
I'm
TV at
dead asleep. And they
5
look
a.m.
good. And they look good and they're alert because I would be like, I'd have like an IV of coffee and still not be alert.
And still not be there, you know?
Right.
And I just knew in that moment, I'm like, yeah, this isn't it. This isn't it. I don't know what it is at this point.
Mhm.
I was still, and I wasn't even looking for anything, to be honest, because I was in like a 3-year contract at that time. So,
Right.
like, I still had like.
You were like, wait a minute, I still got a
4 years.
contract.
Like, at this point, Derrion, you're in a contract. So,
Right.
this is going to be your life, at least right now.
Right.
Now, what it's going to look like after this, I guess we'll just cross that bridge when we actually get there. So, that was a revelation that came to my mind.
Mhm.
I will say when I had because this moment of like clarity, a moment of change, I don't think it was something that I was even looking for.
Mhm.
Even with that revelation that came to me, it wasn't something that I was even like I said, pursuing. But I
Right.
would just say like my life shifted. This was 2025. So I want to say I think it was like New Year's 2023. I was in Dallas, and I was with a friend. And me and her, like one of my best friends, and we for the last few years, we would always just spend New Year's together or whatever.
Right.
So we were in Dallas. She had just moved there, and we didn't know what we wanted to do. And we literally put it in the bag. Either we're going to go out to the club, somebody club. We were going to just stay in and just chill, or we were going to go to church. We put it into a hat, and she pulled church, and I pulled church. So we went
No
to church.
coincidence.
Yep. No coincidence. So we obliged and we went to church. And that I think was like one of the most life-changing moments. Because at that moment, like I didn't get baptized or anything, but at that moment is when I gave my life to God.
Right.
And I've been on this spiritual journey with Him and reconnecting with Him ever since. And that's brought so much clarity. Because even in that moment, I was still, I knew I wanted to be in Charlotte or Atlanta. I knew I wanted to stay within like the Southeast because I just love it over here. And I just knew like either one of those cities. So I started pursuing that, and it just wasn't working out at like every single turn. And it just got to the point where I was just like, you know what? Like I have to expand my view.
Right.
Because I started seeing the industry for what it was. You know, like at that time I didn't have the Emmys or anything of that nature, but I still had accolades. I knew for myself I still have the talent. And it was the revelation that if we're not going to appreciate talent for what it is, then I have to figure my life out. Like, there's no reason why. And another big moment too was I was contacting like the Charlotte news director every time there was an opening, which was the same company that I was in. So at least you give me at least you give me that courtesy, right? I was
Right.
contacting her every time a new opening came with like a morning anchor or a weekend anchor or whatever, and she would never respond. Never respond. And it wasn't NABJ last year. It was NABJ in 2023. 2023 was a transformative year. She was at NABJ. And what's the first thing she told me? Oh, yeah, I've been getting your emails.
Okay. So you haven't been getting them.
You've been getting my emails. And when she looked at my reel, because that's what happens in reel is, of course,
Right.
like a mirage of like all my work and everything. And she just started nitpicking like the most stupidest things. Like, oh, I don't think, the turtleneck with the suit is as sophisticated as you think it is. She just started just going over it. Like, mind you,
Wow.
if you don't like the turtleneck with the suit, I'll wear a button down because I have a
Right.
button
It really
down.
wasn't about the turtleneck,
I will
was it?
go to Macy's, boo. Like,
Of course. I got it.
It's not a problem. Like,
Right.
But you're not saying anything about the work, right?
Right.
And I understand in TV it's more than just the work, because you have to
Sure.
be somebody that the people want to see in the morning. You got to be
Sure.
someone that people want to look at on TV. So I get that
Right.
aspect of it. But at the same time, like, you also have to have the work as well. And when I started realizing that there isn't an appreciation for natural talent, then I gotta go. Then I have to go. I have to go.
Because that's without question. I mean,
without
just
question.
again, somebody sitting on this end looking and seeing the differences in people on these networks locally. There have been moments where I've just like slammed my laptop down and I'm like, I can't even watch that person because they can't put two words together. They can't put a sentence together.
Jenny, I go to these cities.
What?
My thing is, I go to I love traveling. I will go to these cities and I will turn on the news. Okay,
Horrified,
I
aren't
will
you?
be appalled. Okay,
Right.
And that was my thing. It's like, sis, you're talking about a turtleneck. I've watched your newscast.
Right.
Let's get into it.
Right.
And it wasn't a month later they demoted her and sent her to another station.
How interesting.
Like,
How interesting. Right.
whatever.
So it wasn't, it was clearly what she was doing wasn't working, but what you were doing was working. So for you, that's when you were like, this format is not going to work for me.
No, it's just not going to work. And if you've been on this spiritual journey, you like, there's a bit of disobedience when you're following God, because he shows you something and then you're like, I think I want to go this way, and you still try to go that way, and it's going to continuously just not work. And that's what happened. It just wasn't just working out, and it just wasn't working, and even when I had finally decided to like just say, okay, I'm out, like it's just time. Even in the moments, I was still talking to a station. It was a station in Memphis, actually. And they wanted me to come out to be an evening anchor. And I thought, oh, great. Like, oh, evening anchor. Right. And then they were trying to change like their 9 p.m. newscast from like just news to like 9 to 9:30 news. And then 10, like, then 9:30 to 10 be like a podcast style. So if I had multiple podcasts in Myrtle Beach, this was like ideal for me. I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect. Like I come, I anchor the 5 o'clock, and then I do the 9 o'clock, and then I do the podcast, and I go home. Like that's like ideal. Jenny, they were trying to pay less than what I was making in Myrtle Beach.
To do more. Wow.
A bigger market, like Myrtle Beach is market like 97. Memphis is like market like 50, 60.
Wow.
And I wasn't asking for no astronomical amount of money.
No, but you were asking for your worth.
For worth.
Right.
Worth. Or just a realistic salary.
A realistic number. Exactly.
A realistic number. Not even like my actual worth. Because like, we could really get up there if we wanted to. But like, just a realistic number for the actual job that I'll be doing. And I even contacted one of my former news directors who first hired me. And he was a news director in that market, and I told him how much they were trying to, pay me. He was like, "Oh, absolutely not, absolutely not." Mind you, the same man who told me to when he ended up leaving the station within the first year that I got to the station, he was like, "Honestly, I thought we were taking a chance with you," and he was like, "I thought it wasn't going to work out, and we was going to make you into a web guy." But he was like, "But when I saw you on the news for the first time,
he knew.
Like I knew." So, yeah.
So what do you think, like that being said, like, what do you think kind of happened and why are we not letting these great journalists be seen in these markets? Why is it a money thing? There was so much to talk about with Derrion as he navigated this new and exciting chapter of his life. So we are breaking up episode 21 into 2 parts. So come back on July 23rd for part 2 of Anchored No More, Why Derrion Henderson Chose Change.
Let's go.